Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Good Guy Show. I'm Tony, he's Jeremy, and we're here for another hour of mild entertainment. But today, we have a special guest.
Yes. And I
see your eyes searching for something.
To use the word mild, I mean, I'm always going to fight you on whenever you say mild because
I don't want to get people's hopes up.
Well, listen, man. People are allowed to make their own decisions, and you got to stop quantifying us as mild.
This is my introduction. Well, you want to change the introduction? You do it.
That's true. You do the best introduction. But to do, mild, I guess mild's
all
good.
right, I'll try to think of something different.
Because some people hate it.
It's probably not going to be better, but...
Will it be gooder?
Might be gooder.
Hey, look what we did there. All right. Well, as the great Tony Mello said, we do have a special guest, and it is a local legend, a local guy. Came here, lived here, grew up here, did his thing here, studied here, left, did great things, and now he's back. And man, we couldn't be more excited, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your hands together for the wonderful Bill Morrison. Hey, everybody. It's a clapping time. Here we go.
I couldn't get the applause button up.
What are
That's
you
right.
do?
I came crawling back.
You came crawling back. Yeah. Well, yeah, man. So you've been back, what, how many years? 4 years?
Almost 5 years. 5 years in November.
5 years.
Yeah.
What's your address? Where do you live?
Right.
No, so dude, yeah, so you left. You were in Lincoln Park. You went to CCS.
Yes.
As a technical
CCS, for people who don't know what that is, it's the College for Creative Studies.
Creative Studies, yes. You studied there. You got your piece of paper. You were a technical illustrator.
Well, I graduated CCS with a certificate in illustration.
Illustration, right?
So I flunked out of the degree program.
Okay.
Because with the degree program, you have all these academic classes.
Okay.
And it was intense. So I had an English class where I had to write a paper every week.
You had an English class in CCS?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because to get a degree,
that's
like
a real
to get
college.
A bachelor's degree,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
And I couldn't keep up. I couldn't do all of my art assignments and also write a paper. I have to read a book every week and then write a paper on it. So I just thought, I can't do this. What are my options? And I spoke to a counselor, and they said, well, you can graduate with a certificate.
Okay.
And quite frankly, back then, nobody cared if you had a degree.
Right.
They just wanted to see your portfolio.
But you did so before computers, I mean, you did a lot of technical illustration,
Yes.
right?
So the first job that I was able to get after CCS was at a place in Livonia called Art Tech.
Okay.
And it was a technical illustration studio. So our clients were Ford Motor Company, GM, Chrysler, TACOM, which was the Army tank division.
Wow.
So we basically did illustrations for like the parts manuals, mechanics manuals, owner's manuals for
So when people see like the manuals and stuff, and they see like the written word, and then they see a point,
all those little drawings
focused on
inside those, in like your car's owner's manual.
Yeah.
All those little drawings in there were done by
that would show you
somebody like
where to fill your oil in the engine.
Right.
And I did like exploded views of engine parts and things like that for mechanics manuals and guides.
And was that so? That was your how did you come across that? Was that like something that was like out there, like, hey, you get a job here?
No, there was a guy I went to school with. I think he was like a year ahead of me. And he worked there. He didn't actually work there, but he did freelance work for them. So he kind of introduced me to them because I was looking for something.
Right.
I really wanted to do, like my first 2 years of CCS, I wanted to be a comic book artist.
Okay.
So every assignment that I got, I tried to like shoehorn comic books into it somehow, like to make it somehow
fit into what you wanted
like
to
I
go,
could do a drawing of Spider-Man or Batman or something. And then I started realizing that back then, this was, the before times, way before, to be a comic book artist, you had to move to New York.
Okay.
Because that's where all the publishers were. They didn't exist anywhere else, not even California. So, I was raised on Martin Scorsese movies and 70s cop shows that took place in New York. And I was terrified. I'd never been to New York, but I thought, I don't think I can survive there. So I had this one teacher for an airbrush class, great illustrator named Gary Ciccarelli. And he kind of opened my eyes to this California airbrush style that was being done in Los Angeles.
That's the guy I met at the Detroit Comic Con, I think, or the one that you did.
Fanfare?
Fanfare. Yeah, right?
Yeah,
I
he
think,
might have been there.
Yeah, he came up and you guys hugged. It was a really beautiful.
Yeah.
I didn't realize who he was.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And he did, like in the 80s and 90s, he did a lot of illustrations for toy packaging for like all the Marvel action figures. But anyway, he turned me on to all these illustrators that were West Coast primarily airbrush artists, and got me really excited about that look. And so I started sort of driving my portfolio in that direction, kind of away from comic book art and more in the direction of this slick 1980s California look, which is what led me out to Los Angeles.
Okay. Were you married? Were you married at the time? Were you single at the time?
I worked at Art Tech for a year after school and then got married. And then my wife and I moved to Plymouth, Michigan. Okay. And we lived there for a year before I went out to California.
Because, now, did you go out to California with the hopes of finding what you wanted out there? Or did you, send a bunch of portfolios ahead? And
I took a week's vacation. I had vacation coming. And so I went out there without my wife. I just took that time and I took my portfolio and I set up a bunch of interviews at different places, illustration studios, ad agencies. And just every day I rented a car. I slept on a friend's sofa, and every day I just
So you had
Hollywood.
buddies that went out there already that were doing stuff.
My wife Kara and I both had a friend who lived down in Orange County, and she's an actress. And so I stayed on her sofa and then drove up to Hollywood from there, which was, a huge commute every day for a week.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how far Orange County was.
Was the traffic
Hollywood.
horrible back then also?
It's worse now, but it was really bad back then.
Huh.
So I did that every day. And what I didn't realize was in Michigan, if you're an illustrator, generally you get a job in a studio or at an agency, and you're like an in-house, you're on the staff, you have a salary. And out in LA, it's all freelance. So every place I went, even if they liked my portfolio, they asked me to give them my leave behind, which is, a little postcard with an illustration of mine that has all my contact info.
Huh.
And I kept saying to everybody, well, no, I'm really looking for a staff position. And they say, oh, no, we don't do that here. We just hire freelancers. If we want illustration, we get a freelancer. And so they would say, before they knew that, they would say, give us your leave behind. If something comes in, we'll call you. And I was like, well, if you call me, I'm going to have to get on a plane.
Yeah.
So that's not going to work for me. So I ended up interviewing at this one place called BD Fox Advertising. And they were like a boutique ad agency that catered to the film industry. So it was all movie poster advertising. They did some TV guide ads, things like that. And they looked at my portfolio and they said, well, we think we could probably use you occasionally, but what we could really use more often than anything is somebody to be like a sketch artist, to like sketch up ideas for movie posters, not do the finished product, but do the rough comps and thumbnail sketches and things like that. We don't see any of that in your portfolio. So why don't you go home, go back to Michigan, spend a couple of weeks doing some samples of just sketches, just rough stuff, send it to us, we'll revisit, and then we'll give you a call. So I did that. I just did like roughs of popular movies. I did a Star Wars. I did a Indiana Jones, And then I got a call one day and they said, we just got in a ton of work and we could really use you. Can you be out here tomorrow? And I know.
Jeez.
And I was like, I didn't want to blow this. So I was like, I don't think I can be there tomorrow, but how about the day after?
Right.
And they said, good enough. So I hung up, I booked a flight, and 2 days later I was in California.
Wow.
And again, staying with a friend temporarily. And they gave me like a month tryout period.
Or like a probation.
Like a probation. And after 2 weeks, the boss took me out to lunch and he said, I think you're working out, at least for us. So if it's working for you, you've got a job. And if you want the job, call your wife. And
See, I was hoping you were going to say, he took you out and he's chomping on a cigar and he's like, "You got moxie, kid. You're going to make it in this industry. Come on out."
So
it wasn't far off from that.
So this was a salary gig for you. This is like
it was kind of salary. It was basically if it was kind of like punching a clock. So
right.
It was more hourly.
Okay.
And if there was no work for me, I had to punch out. Like I had to keep a timesheet. So there were times when there was nothing for me to do, but I kind of hung around there in case something came in, so I could get back on the clock.
Were you working the whole time? So what was the company called, or does the company still exist?
No, it was called BD, and initials stood for Brian David.
That's
Fox.
funny, like BD, the Bun Dizine, like the comics.
Like
That's
the
funny.
French comics.
That's funny. That's funny.
So BD Fox Advertising.
Okay.
And Brian Fox was the owner. And, we did a lot of big ad campaigns. They did, before I signed on with them, they did E.T. They did the original Road Warrior.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the notable one any notable ones that you did with them?
Probably the biggest one was House.
So now you just did you did the raw sketch, you did the whole finished product, or
we had in-house art directors,
okay.
And the art director, I believe, was Rob Biro, and so he handed me a sketch, and he said, turn this into a painting.
Oh wow!
So I had, I took photos of my own hand in the position, and then I just kind of.
I mean, because this is really an iconic. This is like a B movie horror film, right?
Yeah. Kind of upper B movie, but
I mean, I'm not much.
I mean, it's a real cult film now.
It's a cult film.
A lot of kids who grew up, see either. I don't know that many saw it in the theaters, but the same image was on the video cassette box.
Well, you did. You're talking about cult movies. You also did the poster for Return of the Living Dead, didn't you?
No, I worked on it.
Okay.
I did sketches for it.
Okay.
But I didn't do the finish.
You didn't do the finished art
for that one, no. But I did get to see the film, almost before anyone else. And that was what would happen. Like if we were working on a campaign, we would get these big 3/4-inch videotapes, and they were like rough cuts of the films. So usually no music. Sometimes no sound effects added, none of what they call
just
sweetening.
Voices,
just the actors, like the raw footage, edited,
right?
And then there would be like a time code across the bottom, constantly running, so that if you needed to, grab an image, you could, write down the code.
Well, I'm sure it also helped to know what the movie was about, to know what to build, your poster images
so we
with.
would have sessions where, a tape would arrive and we would all sit in a room and watch it. And then if anybody had any ideas, we would have like a bull session where, we would throw out ideas. Then usually the art directors would go back and they would just, do some just very loose thumbnail drawings. And then I would get some of those to draw up, and some of the freelancers would get those.
So while you're sitting, so what do you put in what, like 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day?
Yeah,
kind of doing
it's
that?
usually like an 8-hour
But
day.
you obviously, you still have this comic book sensibility, this comic book mind, like you want to do comic book stuff.
Right.
So
That was still the dream.
But there's no comic book publishers out there, right?
By then, Pacific Comics existed out there, but they were down in San Diego. So I didn't really have access to them. So yeah, basically in LA, it was still kind of a desert.
So, but you're doing this kind of is a full-time gig for you. You're doing that stuff, and then are you deciding like, okay, man, are you doing extracurricular, working in other projects on the time?
Whenever, like I said, if I was off the clock, I could take on freelance work. I could work on my own self-promotion images, just things for my portfolio.
No, a portfolio seems to be a different thing from what it was then to what it is now. Like, what was a portfolio? What was a portfolio for you back in the day as a comic book artist? Like, what were you trying to represent?
Well, I mean, at this point, I didn't have anything really comic book oriented, because I thought that was a closed door.
Okay.
I didn't really think that was going to happen.
Okay.
So everything in my portfolio was either movie images or record album types, images. Just things that applied to the LA entertainment scene.
Okay. Have you ever done any record albums?
Nothing big. Just some like minor.
Just stuff like people hit you up like, hey man, you're talented, or you like a band, you hit them up.
Right.
That's kind of cool. Anybody notable? Anybody that you're a fan of? You want to give a shout out to?
I've done a couple for the Dean Mora Orchestra, which is the band. It's a swing band that my wife sings with.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I've done a couple of their album covers.
Cool. Okay. So how many years are you doing this? Are you working with the BD and Fox company?
So I worked with them for about 4 years.
Okay.
Now, remember when I was talking about Gary Ciccarelli turning me on to all these West Coast airbrush illustrators?
Yes.
So some of those guys were like my gods, with the lower G.
Right.
They were just illustrators that I looked up to, hoped to meet someday, emulated. And one day I'm at work, and Brian's wife, the boss, Brian, his wife called me, and normally she was in the office because she ran a greeting card company out of the same offices that we occupied. And she called me and said, Bill, I'm in a jam. I can't make it into the office, but I'm supposed to meet with an illustrator to look at his portfolio. So can you fill in for me and just look at the portfolio, give him some notes, take his contact information, and then give it to me when I get in? Yeah, no problem. I'm thinking it's going to be some kid, just somebody starting out, trying to show their portfolio around. In walks David Willardson, who not many people may know his name, but if you've ever seen the American Graffiti album cover of the waitress on the roller skates with that's David Willardson.
Oh, wow.
And he's done a ton of like really famous images. And so he was one of those guys that I idolized. And he comes in, introduces himself, and I'm standing there thinking, I've got to give a portfolio review to this guy. Are you kidding me? So I'm just trying my best to be cool and act like this is a normal everyday thing. And so we're kind of sitting there in my space, and I had a poster on the wall of one of the posters that I had painted for a movie called Choose Me, and it was a foreign film. And he kept looking at it while I'm looking through his portfolio and talking. And at one point he said, so, because he knew, he was in my work area. So he said, did you paint that? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, I thought Mick McGinty painted that. Now, Mick McGinty was a young guy, maybe a couple years older than me, but a really hot shot illustrator.
Okay.
And so Dave knew who he was. He was like an up and coming, hot shot, like I said. And so that was flattering that he thought this guy, Mick McGinty, had painted that. And I said, no, that's me. He said, yeah, I've seen this around town. He said, do they ever let you do freelance work here? Like, or are you exclusive? And I said, no, if I'm off the clock, I can do freelance work. And he said, why don't you come over to my studio? I might have some stuff for you. So I did. I went over and he gave me a job, just a freelance job. And then that went well. A bit later, he gave me another freelance job. And so I had 2 under my belt with him. And then he made me an offer. And he said, I want to hire you to work in my studio full time. So,
So
like I say, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
So he had in the studio, he was coming to pitch for greeting cards.
Yeah.
And it was like, what, a little extra, little walking around money or something like that?
Well, he ran a studio, so he was really looking to get work for the studio, not necessarily for him, but for other guys who worked for him, so that they were always kept busy between like big advertising jobs. He always wanted to have stuff to fill in between the bigger jobs.
So this is what you that's what you
Yeah,
did
that's
right
the
there?
one.
If you can get that right there. Let's see if we can.
It's a very tight shot of a woman speaking on a pink telephone with
I've seen that.
pink fingernails and pink lipstick.
Very cool. Very cool.
Jeremy,
That's a painting?
What's up?
clean your screen, man.
Can you
Filthy.
listen, dude? Listen. This thing's so old. If anyone would like to sponsor the Good Guys and buy some new equipment, we'd really appreciate it. What are you gonna do?
To answer your question, it is a painting, but it's a painting done over a really bad photograph.
Okay.
So the studio sent over this photo of this woman talking on a phone, and she didn't have the glamorous nails and they
Just kind of like a reference shot.
yeah. So they printed that out for me big, and then I just completely painted over it. So the photo acted sort of like as an underpainting.
Sure.
Just
Okay.
to give me the information. So it is a painting, but I have to say, like when you paint over a photograph, even if you cover up every bit of the photo, so it's not retouching, it's really redoing, it's still somehow, or at least for me, like if I did a painting from scratch, it wouldn't necessarily look like that.
Right.
But painting over a photograph, even if I'm covering up every bit of the photo with paint, it still somehow allows me to create more of a photorealistic look.
I do that. I use photo reference like that all the time. So
Yeah.
And but also too, like if you would have gotten like the fingernail polish or the shimmer off by a little bit, it would have looked trashy. There's a lot to doing like photorealism.
Well, yeah, you have to. I mean, keeping the light source consistent is a big deal, and I mean, there's so many little tricks that if you don't get, all the little details right, the whole thing just looks off.
Yeah. And it's a legitimate technique.
Oh yeah.
Some people might think it's cheating, but
I think a lot of people now call it the Drew Struzan method.
Well, he never painted over photos.
Oh, okay.
He always he would take photographic reference and pencil, probably traced.
Right.
But then he would put in like a ground color and then render into that. he did a lot of it's kind of mixed media because he would work with paint and Prismacolors.
Okay.
So a lot of that outlining, like he would do a face and it would have like kind of a white outline edge around it.
Yeah.
A lot of that was done with Prismacolors.
Okay.
And then he would take a toothbrush and he would spatter paint, and he had all kinds of techniques that he would do to get texture and things.
All right, so 4 years. So now you're working with. Now you're in the new studio.
Yeah. So I'm working with Dave, and that's where I started doing the Disney posters.
Okay, so he already had that account, or how does that?
No, he had done, I think, a couple of images for Disney.
Okay,
but it was more for the theme parks.
so this is going back to the whole. Everyone's a freelancer at this point, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I remember one image he did that was for Disney World. So it was like a poster of Goofy for the theme park.
Okay.
But he had never done anything for the film advertising.
Okay. So did you were like, hey BD, thanks so much, bros. I gotta go and do this stuff, or did you still sort of have your?
No, I basically said, Dave Willardson made me an offer, and
Right.
it's a lot of money,
Merci beaucoup.
so I have to do it, and they were understanding.
Sure.
I don't think anyone thought I was going to be there forever.
Right.
So
So you're with the studios, David Willardson Studios, and then now you're producing Disney stuff. You're
So the first one that I did, Disney came based on that Goofy poster that some of the art directors at Disney Feature Film had seen. These art directors contacted him and they said, "We'd like you to do a teaser poster for Cinderella because we're re-releasing the film into theaters. So we need a one-sheet movie poster."
wow.
And they don't do that today. I mean, obviously, any of the classics, they just go right to video.
Yeah.
But back then, they would actually give them another theatrical run.
I can remember as a kid them coming to the theater every year. They'd have new Disney film in the movie theaters every week.
Yep.
Everything was on like a 10-year rotation.
Yeah.
Because they always knew there was going to be a whole new crop of kids growing up who had never seen Pinocchio, who had never seen Peter Pan or Bambi.
That's the one I saw. Peter
So
Pan,
they would bring it back to the theaters. And every time they did that, they needed a fresh poster. So I got to do the Cinderella teaser, and Disney liked it. And then they wanted to do like what they call more a wide release poster. So not the teaser, but the one that's in the theaters when the film's in the theaters. And so that's the one that's got Cinderella and the Prince and
Man, they used to put so
Castle
much
and
money
everything.
into the marketing.
And,
Yeah.
and funny enough, when they draw over the cells of and the filmed actresses sort of doing movements and stuff.
rotoscoping.
Rotoscoping.
Oh, excuse me, boys. Jeez. Wow. Sorry.
That
What's
that
going
would
on?
be rotoscoping.
Okay, guys. All right, nerds. Fine. No, yeah. So, but is that so? Like, yeah.
But
so
that's done for animation, not for,
Not for
that's
the
an animation
advertising.
technique.
But was that involved at all with doing the posters of working with the actresses or actors
No.
and
I think for Cinderella, the actress might have been dead by the time I did my
Thank you.
poster.
Mm,
No, I mean obviously it's a lot of years later,
right.
and even though Disney's putting a lot of money into the marketing, we were basically on our own. They said, let us know if you need model sheets, but I don't for the older stuff. I don't remember them even providing model sheets. We had to kind of scrounge
They
those.
probably didn't even produce them back then. It was,
Well, they did, but for the new animated films.
right,
Well,
the newer stuff. But I mean,
for
like the
those
stuff that was
for those
done back
for
in the
those
30s.
for those at home, what's a model sheet?
Oh, well, okay. A model sheet is when an animated TV show or a film is being made. There are character designers, there are prop designers, there are background designers, and those designers produce model sheets for the animators to follow. So, like if I was designing a character, say for Futurama, so say I'm designing Bender,
Okay.
I would do a turnaround, which shows Bender, 5-point turnaround would show him from 5 different angles.
Okay.
So there'd be front, side, 3/4 front, 3/4 rear, and back. And then there would be sheets that show him in different poses. This
so
is
that
what his
other
body can do.
artists could. Okay.
Yeah, this is
So
how
this way, all
his
the
body
artists that
moves.
draw him can
Got it.
draw him the same way.
All right.
Right.
So since you brought that up, Bill, let's try and. I mean, dude, you have such an extensive history. I think people don't understand. I think people just see you and they're like, oh yeah, he just did stuff for these guys and these guys, and okay. But I don't think people.
I hear that all the time.
But people, right? Okay, that's the half hour.
That's
right
our
there.
halfway
That's a
mark.
half hour mark. Okay, so so that was perfect timing. Thank you so much, you sexy little weirdo. Okay, so now you're with Dave. Now how long does that last?
Between 4 and 5 years.
And then while you work with Dave, obviously, dude, you still got that comic book mind going. Now are you like? Is it like before it was dead, but is it like revisited or?
Yeah, I think working on the Disney films started, like I hadn't done animated or cartoon characters or comic characters since art school.
Okay.
At this point. And suddenly I'm doing, I'm working on Disney characters. So that's, it's not comics, but it's in that direction.
In that vein, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So now you're like, oh, maybe this is a thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I still wasn't thinking I'll get to do a comic book yet.
Sure.
But I was thinking, well, maybe I'll get to work with those types of characters.
Okay. So you like going to parties, you're meeting people, you're like, like, hey, my name is Bill, and like Dave's introducing to people and stuff like that. You're bringing your wife and you're going to
Not so much parties, but you go to different things, events and screenings and things, and you meet people.
Okay. And then okay, and then I kind of know the story about, so like what's now, I mean, kind of what's happening now? So like how long are you with Dave for? You're like
about 4.5 to 5 years.
Okay. And
while I was there, The Simpsons happened.
Yes.
So 1990.
On the Truman Show, right? What's her name?
The Tracy Ullman Show.
Tracy Ullman, thank you.
Yeah. So I'd been watching The Simpsons on the Tracy Ullman Show for a couple of years. And then they did the Christmas special in December of 1989. And then in February, that was when the regular half-hour show launched. So to the best of my memory, I think the show had been on the air like maybe 3 weeks, and I got a call from an art director who I'd worked with at BD Fox. And she's actually the one who brought Matt Groening in. Did I mention Matt Groening?
No, you hadn't mentioned.
No, who's that?
So Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons.
Yes.
I met him at BD Fox prior to The Simpsons, years before The Simpsons.
Right, at a Comic-Con, right?
No, he was a struggling cartoonist. He did a comic strip called Life in Hell.
Okay.
And to make extra money, he would write copy for the movie posters. And he wrote greeting cards, he wrote record reviews, he wrote all kinds of things. But one of the things he wrote was the taglines on movie posters. So, like at the top of the poster, it would say, "In a world where..."
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, one of those.
That's a paid gig?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tony, let's go. Wow.
So actually the first collaboration between me and Matt, not that we directly worked together, but I painted a poster for a horror movie called Blood Diner, which was a movie about this diner in the middle of nowhere. And I guess they had trouble getting meat. So they would set up these traps on the road that would give people flat tires, like these rumble strips.
Right.
And so people would have car crashes. They would take the people and put them in the ground so that just their heads were above the ground. and they would put like these burlap sacks on them, and they would feed them every day and get them really fat, and then they would slaughter them and turn them into sausage.
As you would, absolutely.
Right.
So that's how this diner business out in the middle of nowhere stayed afloat, was by serving people.
Yeah.
So I did the poster art, and they used one of Matt's taglines. They would have like multiple writers come in, and the writers would write pages of possible taglines, and then they would pick somebody, then they would get paid.
Oh my God, what a crappy gig.
Yeah. Like, cause you would write, like maybe 2 pages of lines that would never get used. I think you would get paid for doing that, but it was probably peanuts.
Right.
But then if they selected yours, then you would get paid more. So anyway, they chose his for Blood Diner, and it was first they greet you, then they eat you. Or something like that. First they greet you, then they want to eat you, or something. So I always consider that the first time Matt and I did something together.
Okay, so now you're
You get a call from the art director.
Yeah, so
working on The
Millie
Simpsons.
was the one who brought Matt into BD Fox for that gig to write copy for the movie posters. So they were friends. And so, some years later, I'm working at this at Willardson studio, and I get this call from Millie. I hadn't talked to her in a couple of years. And she said, I don't know. She said, you remember Matt Groening? I said, yeah, sure. And she said, well, he's got a show now on Fox called The Simpsons. And I said, yeah, I've seen it. It's, I'm a fan. It's good. And she said, well, he's put me in charge of all the merchandise art. And I'm looking for artists to do art for all this flood of merchandise that's about to come out. And I remembered that you used to be into comics and cartoons, and so I thought you might want to take a stab at this. And I said, yeah, sure. So I went to her studio, and she gave me kind of a test, kind of showed me how to draw the characters, and I did my thing, and she gave me a job, gave me a freelance job. And Fox liked what I was doing, and I ended up doing freelance for about 6 months until finally Fox made me an offer, kind of like the offer I'd gotten from Dave to work at his studio. And, it was more money, and I couldn't turn it down. So I left there, and I went to work for Fox full time.
So for those at home who don't understand quite what merchandising, I mean, there's so many different levels. Like, people assume that you just cut and paste like a Homer character, and then you put it on a T-shirt and stuff. But you actually have to recreate it, you have to redraw, you have to redo for merchandise, right?
Yeah. Every studio has a department. They used to call it licensing and merchandising, and now it's called consumer products. So Warner Brothers has a consumer products department, Fox has one, Disney, everybody. And their job is to attract licensees for a property. So, we're talking about The Simpsons. So, like when The Simpsons started.
There we go. We get. Oh, geez. We're
We
going to
had-
talk about this in a minute.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the big ones.
Yeah.
They would have all these licensees who would take out a license to use The Simpsons on their products. So it might be a T-shirt manufacturer. It might be somebody who does bed linens.
Right.
It might be someone who does kitchenware, video games, whatever.
Sure.
So they buy a license from Fox, now Disney, and then it was my department, the art department, to produce artwork for a style guide that each one of those licensees receives, so that they've got ready-made artwork that they can put on their products.
Wow.
So we would do a style guide there'd be, a couple pages of Homer in different poses, a couple of pages of Marge, all the characters doing different things. There's a whole bunch of rules, what you can do with the characters, what you can't.
So you're doing like all the stuff for the merchandise, for stuff that people could buy, right? Coffee mugs, shirts, whatever. And so you're making sure that that was okay to go out, or you were doing the imagery.
Well, I had two jobs. I was hired to produce the art.
Okay.
And I also oversaw a couple of other artists who were also producing art. And then I was also hired to learn Millie's job, and her job was to do approvals.
Okay.
So she had to meet with the licensees. She had to meet with, or not so much the licensees, but the creative executives at Fox.
Yeah.
Those were the people that worked with the licensees. The licensees, like, you'd give them the art, and then they would do mock-ups.
Okay.
And sometimes the mock-ups would come in and they would use the characters inappropriately, or the design would look really bad. So it was the creative execs to work with the approval person, which was Millie, and also me learning to do Millie's job, who would try to get them back on track and do something that was aesthetically pleasing and was consistent with other merchandise that was out there, so that The Simpsons worked as a brand.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
We always,
consistency, right?
yeah. The mission was consistency and quality, and we wanted to, basically put our best foot forward so that all the various licensees, and there were hundreds who had taken out licenses for The Simpsons,
right,
they would all be putting out product that represented The Simpsons in a positive way.
So, Bill, I'm sorry that we're only an hour show. I mean, this is phenomenal. We've already met the half point, but I want to try and move forward. Can you kind of move forward now? Now you're still in the same company, and then now you've got a new gig, right? You've moved on.
We can go longer if you want to go longer.
What does that mean? Okay, whatever.
So we could run long, is what he's saying.
All right, I don't know what that means. All right, fine. I just always told there's always time limit. But okay, so
we don't need no stinking time limits.
So eventually, Millie retires and you eventually get Millie's job?
No, I never took Millie's job. However, I did when things kind of slowed down. The idea was that we would be working in tandem, and I would be taking some of the workload off of her.
I see.
Because there was just too much stuff coming out.
When things slow down with the licensing merchandise, and then now you can sort of get more.
So eventually, that Simpsons mania of the early '90s subsided, and it turned out they didn't really need me to do that part of the job. I was still drawing, but they didn't really need me to do her job. Although I did do it whenever she went on vacation.
Right. So every time some nerd is sleeping with a Simpsons pillowcase, I can think of you.
Yeah.
That's weird to say. Okay. So now, so you're doing this gig. It's going good. Everything's fine. You're loving California. You're loving LA. Hating the traffic, I'm sure, but you're loving. You're doing your thing. And your wife is doing a band. She's doing music and stuff like that.
Yeah, she started singing with a swing band.
That's amazing. And then you get the opportunity for Matt Groening gets a new project going on.
Well, what happened was with I know where you're going.
Thank you.
When Matt made his deal with Fox, he did something that is kind of unheard of today, which is he retained all the publishing rights.
Okay.
So, I mean, everybody's probably heard about George Lucas making his deal with Fox and retaining all the merchandise rights. So all the Star Wars action figures and everything, he controlled all that. And when that happened, Star Wars was such an explosion, so successful in not only as a film, but as a merchandise property, that Fox went, oh, hell no, we're not ever doing that again.
Right.
And they didn't really learn their lesson because they gave Matt the publishing rights. They didn't give him merchandise, but they gave him the publishing rights for The Simpsons because his lawyer made the case that he's a cartoonist and, he might want to do a comic book or do a newspaper strip or do his own, comic version of The Simpsons.
Well, you probably had some suit thinking, well, that's a TV show. What do they want to do a
Yeah,
comic book
just do it
for?
dirty
Well-
comic books, yeah.
When that deal was made, it was for the Tracy Ullman show too.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
and The Simpsons was such a small part of that. They were just these little cartoon bumpers that would take you in and out of commercial breaks. And so they looked at that and went like, yeah, sure,
Wait, so
whatever.
he worked off the same deal he signed from the Tracy Ullman show
Yeah.
to get the TV series?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, because the deal was made. They owned The Simpsons when he made that deal.
Okay.
But he retained the publishing rights in perpetuity. So it didn't matter that now it's a big TV show or now it's a movie or it's a video game or whatever it is.
So whenever publishing rights means exactly what, for the people at home.
So publishing rights, there's like things that fall into that category. So publishing included books, comic books, calendars, and for some reason not posters. I think posters sometimes falls into that category, but it didn't for
Okay.
this. So he didn't get poster rights, but he got those three things: books, calendars, comic books,
Okay.
and magazines.
Okay.
So, because of that, I was, at some point, considered like the main Simpsons artist because
Okay.
I was doing almost all the merchandise art.
Right.
I
But
was-
yet you weren't doing any of the animation for the show.
No,
Right.
I was doing the advertising, like the TV guide ads. Anytime there was a magazine article about The Simpsons.
Sorry. What was the connection with you, the animators, doing all that, and then you? Were you guys kind of hanging out, talking, or was it sort of like a separate?
Not really. I knew some of them,
Yeah.
but not in the early days. I think in the early days I didn't really know any of them.
Okay.
I would get model sheets from the animation studio to work from. Nothing was ever approved by them. It was all through Millie, the
Okay.
art director. She's the one that did approvals on everything I did. So I started working on Simpsons calendars, on books, all the
Okay.
stuff that Matt controlled, just on a freelance basis.
Sure.
So I was doing my Fox stuff during the day, and then evenings and weekends, I would work on publishing stuff. And one of the publishing projects was a magazine called Simpsons Illustrated, which was like a Simpsons fan magazine. Designed for fans, not like a fanzine. But it had articles and games and puzzles and,
Joe, if you could pull up image number 4.
just things like that.
Like an interview with Nancy Carver, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they needed illustrations for that. So that's that cover was by Steve Vance, I believe. I didn't actually draw. That's the first issue. I didn't draw the cover for that, but I worked on all the subsequent ones.
Okay.
But what I did do in this magazine was the first Simpsons comic strip, and it was Matt Groening's dream to have a comic section because he grew up loving comics and
He did the zine, right? The zine of, right? Was he doing zines at Comic-Con?
well, he did. He used to do zines of Kinko's printed collections of his Life in Hell comic strips.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez.
So we started doing a comic section, and in the first issue, it was just one page,
Okay.
and then it grew to like 2 or 3 pages, and then 5, 6, 10. So by the end, we did the magazine for 2 years. And by the end, we did 2 annuals. The first annual was a 3D issue. So the follow-up annual, the second year, by that time we'd been, like the comic section had expanded. And that was the thing everybody was enjoying the most, was doing the comics, frankly. And
No, why is that? Why is that?
I don't know. It was just more fun to tell stories than to interview actors and write articles.
Okay.
And,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, it was fun.
Okay.
So somebody decided, let's make the annual a comic book. So it became Simpsons Comics and Stories. We printed it comic book size. And it sold so well that it's what gave Matt the confidence to
You
start
could throw up
Bongo
image
Comics.
number 5, please. Joe.
Bongo Comics.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
this on the screen right now, Simpsons Comics and Stories. This was the annual that you did?
Yeah, it's kind of like the annual in disguise
Okay.
because it's not called Simpsons Illustrated, obviously. So we changed the name to Simpsons Comics and Stories, and we also changed the format to comic size. But if you open it up, there's a line of it, what they call indicia, which is all that text at the bottom of the, like usually the first page of a comic book.
Right, with the copyright information
All
and
that
all that
stuff.
Yeah.
If you look at that, it actually says Simpsons Comics and Stories is a publication of Simpsons Illustrated. And on some variant copies of this, where there's a barcode, it says annual above the barcode.
Okay.
So those are kind of like the tells
That it was tied into the Illustrated magazine.
Right. But it was, like I said, it was an out and out comic book, cover to cover. And that was what, Matt looked at the sales, and then he came to me and Steve and Cindy Vance, who were the editorial and design team for the magazine. And he said, how would you guys like to start a comic book company? And of course. we
Yeah,
said,
Right.
Are you kidding? So we started Bongo, and the rest is history. And now Bongo's history.
Where did Bongo? Where did Bongo come from? The name Bongo.
Matt asked all of us at the beginning to write down a list of names of what we all thought might be a good names for the company. And so we were just writing down names that we thought sounded cool. And I think Bongo was on probably everybody's list because it's, it signifies beatniks and jazz and cool, But it's also the name of one of his Life in Hell characters.
Okay.
And the thing that cinched it for Matt is for anybody that knows comics, like if you've gone into a comic shop and placed an order for, for a pull list, like there's certain comics that you want the store to pull for you, they have this catalog that's
The previews.
the previous catalog for the distributor, Diamond
Right.
Distribution. So they're the big company that distributes comics and comic related stuff to comic shops. So Matt, he told me this later, he wanted a name that would put us right up front in the magazine or in the catalog. And, he said, I want it to either be an A word or a B word. And so since Bongo already checked two boxes, being a cool word and also the name of one of his characters, the third for him was it puts us up front in the distributor catalog.
Okay, I want to change gears real quick and talk about something because we have a short amount of time left right now. But I want to talk about a new project that you're working on. You have a comic called Roswell, Little Green Men, which you're looking to bring back into print.
Yes, Roswell, Little Green Man was a comic that I did at Bongo, and it was the first comic that was not a Simpsons-related book. It predated Futurama, so we did.
And for those that are watching at home or on the YouTubes, please, you can get the QR code. You can learn more about it. So.
Yeah, scan that QR code that's right there, and you can get put on the mailing list to be notified when the, I guess the pre-order.
Well, it's going to be a crowdfunded project. So the book that I did back then has never been collected. So I did 6 issues. There was like a 4-part preview of Roswell that we did in the back of Simpsons Comics. And then there's some other little shorter stories. Those have never been collected together. So this crowdfunded project through Zoop is going to collect everything for the first time, plus have some new never before seen goodies.
Hey Joel, can you put the big QR code out there so people can actually put it on their phone and go blah, 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 like
And
like
if you
did?
don't
There
if you
go.
don't have your phone
Yeah.
and you're just sitting in front of your computer, it's Zoop ZOOP .gg, and that will bring you to the website.
Or you could pause the video. And-
Yeah, or pause the video, whatever. You know.
Yeah, no, this is great. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's for years and years, I had to stop doing Roswell because of Futurama. Matt came up with the idea for Futurama, and he wanted me to help him develop the show visually. And then once it got into production, I was brought on as art director, and I was still editing at Bongo while I was art director on the TV show, so I couldn't do a third thing. So I had to let Roswell go. And ever since then, I've been trying to bring it back, trying to get back to doing new stories. And this is the lead into that. So if this book comes out, I should say when it comes out. I shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Well, the idea you want to build a new audience,
Right.
and then continue it on and
Yeah.
and bring new stories.
So this will be what reintroduces Roswell to the public. Even for Roswell fans, there's stuff in here that they've probably never seen before. So it's going to be the complete Roswell to date. And then after this comes out, I will start producing new material.
I've actually seen this cover before, and I think I've seen the Little Green Man and other illustrations or in other posters and or art pieces at the River's Edge Gallery, 3024 Biddle. No, but yeah, you're a Lincoln Park guy. You're a Downriver guy. You took a chance, moved to California, knowing full well that New York was the place to be, and you did it, man. And I just think it's like kind of cool that I think people just need to know that, you know, like, because they'll look at you like, oh, look at this guy, he's doing a cover, Simpsons cover, whatever. You know, it's like there's no nepotism shit. You know, there's no nepotism stuff. There's no, you know, it's like you put in the hours, you put in the work. You met the people, and you're doing it. And I think that it's inspirational. I think
Yeah, I didn't mention this yet, but I graduated from CCS, College
Right.
for Creative Studies, and now that I'm back in Michigan in the Detroit area, I'm teaching there.
Oh
wow, I didn't know you were teaching. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah,
so I'm teaching a couple of classes per week.
yeah. Okay.
So I'm not there full time as a professor, but I'm an adjunct,
Nice.
and I love encouraging young artists. I love just putting the, you know, whether it's giving instruction based on my experience and my knowledge, or just giving inspiration.
Cool.
I'm all about that. So, yeah, I mean, there's a story here, or maybe a message or a lesson for young artists, because I remember when I was that age, when I was in art school or even high school, you dream and you have all these ideas about what's possible, but there's always that voice in your head saying you'll never get there. It's too far away. It's too big a dream. But it's not true. You know, you can go out there and do it. You can work hard. Sometimes it's timing, and sometimes it's being in the right place at the right time, and who you meet, the connections you make. But if you work hard and you've got some ability, it's definitely possible.
I think we're going to continue this on. So go ahead, Tony, do your thing.
Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, Good Guys Radio. Email us at goodguysradio@gmail.com with any questions or comments about the show. We'd love to hear from you. And be sure to check out our past shows on YouTube by searching for The Good Guys Show, or go to our Facebook page and click on the links.
And also, this episode's to be continued. So
Yes, we're gonna be. This is gonna be a two-parter.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back next month, and Bill will be here again.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Do I have to change my shirt for the next
You
one?
do have to change your shirt. You say he.
What we should do? We should just switch clothes.
That's totally what's going to happen. Yeah.
How much time we got?
Wrap it up.
Okay, that's it. We're out. Peace.